Okay. Welcome, everyone, to this special meeting on April 8th. I was supposed to say August 8th. That would be a jump ahead. On April 8th, 2025. We have just 2 items on the agenda, so I would like a motion to establish the agenda as posted.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor of establishing the agenda as posted, please say aye.
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 Harkening back to ye oldie days, if you are not you, Dan, because you're driving, but everybody else, if you could like raise your hand so I can just see, because sometimes the voices like overlap each other. Thank you. Yes. All opposed? Okay, that passes by a vote of 5-0. And the first item we have is Board Policy 1003, Board Job Description, Draft Resolution 739, Protecting the Right to Learn, Resolution on Student Safety, Privacy, and Immigration Enforcement. This is the second reading, and Christina, I believe, has made the really minor changes that we talked about before, correct?
Correct. It's just including that the district will create a policy based on the letter that and OSPI recommendations and Washington law, and the wording that you mentioned. I think that I think so.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. It looks to me like everything's been incorporated. Does anyone have thoughts, questions, anything they want to comment on?
No, just thanks to Christina and Dan for taking this on and doing it in such a timely fashion.
Ditto. I think it's great. I think it's a great statement to make. Who knows how we're going to have to change things in our world, but I'm confident that this gives support to and direction to our administrators of what the board's expectations are.
President Tucker, Director Glowitz has his hand raised.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, I can't see that. Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, there's just one question I had, and I put it in a comment belatedly, but it was on there's a provision, and I don't have it on me since I'm in the car, but about data collection that states that the district will cease collecting data. The one question that I had is if we currently collect any data, and if so, if that can be purged. Thinking of perhaps proactive steps we can take, in advance to any potential future inquiries.
Great question. The district does not and has not collected any of that, and so we are fully compliant with the data collection requirements of the things that we have to collect versus the ones we don't. So we don't collect any of that anyway.
Thank you for confirming.
You bet. I think they may have put that in there from the NEA piece, just because there's probably some states where they might, or there may be conflicting state laws versus federal laws on that. I'm not exactly sure. But I think because it's a national publication, they may have had some of that in. In the state of Washington, we have not been doing that, and we're compliant with that. The only other addition that I have is Ian Henry has been working in the background, and we'll have on our website, pending the approval of this resolution, both information about the resolution as well as information for families in partnership with the Puget Sound Educational Service District. Some of the things that you were talking about in the early parts of your discussions around this resolution was what kinds of supports can we offer families. And so we put together resources that will be on our website for families, not just about education, but about immigration status and various resources to help them navigate should they need some additional resources for their own family.
Great. If there are there any other comments, questions statements, anything? Not looking like it. We can take a vote on this today if somebody wants to make a motion.
I move that we vote on resolution 739 to be adopted.
Second.
Okay, all in favor of resolution 739, please say aye. Or raise your hand also if you're.
Aye.
Thank you, aye. All opposed, please. Thank you, Dan. All opposed, please say nay. Okay, that passes by a vote of 5-0. Thank you very much, Christina and Dan, for your hard work on this. Sorry, Deborah.
I just have a
I see-
question. Did we
Yeah.
not include our student directors today, or were they not able to make it? Just curious.
I did not hear from them on this, so they're probably that they couldn't make it because they get the normal board, any board invites that go out automatically collect them. So I just don't think they can make it.
Understood. And I just want to make sure that they have an opportunity to present their views. And I know that they can at a later date as well.
Yeah.
Thank you for asking that question. I was literally just wondering the exact same thing. I was like, wait, that doesn't feel right to go straight to a vote. Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you all. Very efficient. Next item is just for discussion, Board Policy 1800 OE10 Instructional Program discussion on MISD HiCap program update 2025. So this is a holdover from the last meeting where we were kind of all looking at slides. I forget if it was 21 and 22, something like that, and not quite seeing eye to eye on like what those slides meant. And then I myself took a look at those slides later and was like, oh, these slides are comparing HiCap students to all students rather than comparing HiCap students to non-HiCap students. And I just thought it would be helpful to have a little bit of a clarification of that. And, you know, if there are more questions people want to ask, like for future discussion, that's fine too. But I just wanted to kind of set the record straight on that. Fred, what do you have for us?
I have pulled up the presentation for your conversation. Weston Lucas, who provided the presentation, is here with us tonight. He's in the boardroom with me. We're really here to listen and hear from what you discuss and however we can help to clarify. And if there are additional inquiries or items that you are curious about as a board, it's for us to be able to capture that and then be able to provide things back to you. The main, I think, takeaway that Weston gave me, and maybe Weston jump in, is, you know, the chart that was under question, let me go down to that page, is really about raw data and not growth data. And so, Weston, do you want to just talk a little bit about that? And then we'll turn it back to you all.
Sure. Yeah, these slides 21 and 22 are an average raw score year over year or it's a single year, but it's different grade levels. So while it does show growth in one way, there are better ways to show growth, as I have understood the questions around this slide. So we do have tools that we use to do a little bit more of a deep dive rather than a single raw score showing the K5 continuum. We could do a deep dive into that data.
What kind of tools would those be? Can you just, and Dan, I see that your hand is up, but what kind of tools would those be? Can you tell us a little bit more?
Yeah, I would go into the iReady tool itself and I would look at growth data there. There are some growth breakdowns there. And then I use our homeroom data tool to build this slide. And so I can go back into homeroom. And as Fred said, we're here to listen tonight. So if there are any clarifying questions that give me some guidance around what more you would like, I'm happy to do that as well.
Thank you. Dan?
Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to point out the observation that looking at the raw data and year over year, I mean, that's another way of saying growth, shows that the growth is greater for all students than just for the HiCap students. And because HiCap is lower, if you were to exclude them from all students, then the relative growth would be higher for non-HiCap. So the way in which I commented on the data at the last meeting was entirely correct. And the statement by another director that it was big misinformation was entirely incorrect.
So I don't know if anyone else wants to tackle that, but I will tell you, I did do the math myself and break out the numbers. So if anybody wants to know the change in reading scores for high cap is plus 222, whereas the change in reading scores for non-high cap is 240.06. So that is higher. The change in math scores over time for high cap math is plus 134, and the change for non-high cap math is plus 140.02. So those numbers are, in like practical terms, a few degrees higher, but the slope is very much the same. If you graph them against each other, they're essentially parallel, just starting at a different point. So for whatever that's worth. Deborah.
Thank you. My understanding, I'm not going to do a back and forth about who's right or who's wrong, or I'm not addressing that. I stand by what I said before and based on the numbers.
Can you please explain that so I understand it? Because we're both looking at the numbers.
Please don't interrupt me. This is
our numbers. So I would like for you to explain.
Dan, I'm not going there with you.
My statement was incorrect, and your statement that my statement was a big misinformation.
Dan, can you let her finish and then you can reply? Deborah, sorry, you were saying what your understanding is?
So my understanding of these charts is that it was the reading assessments that were just done, right? So of the same year, but different cohorts of kids, each kid's in the different grades. So this doesn't reflect growth at all. This is it shows growth from our kindergartners to our fifth graders, but it doesn't show growth of a child or any group of children. Please correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm trying to understand this chart.
That's accurate, Director.
Okay. So we're all talking about something. We're all
right. So this isn't growth at all. So here's what I wanted to say before being rudely interrupted was the things that I'm interested in learning is the things that I'm interested in learning is, number one, are all of our students, how are they achieving currently in the moment? We do that with lots of different ways. And in probably the easiest and most comparable way to compare our students with other students around the state is the SBAC scores. Are they meeting, exceeding? What percentage are they meeting of our students are meeting and exceeding standards? So I'm interested in that to know overall. Do I expect that our scores are going to be very good? Yes, I expect that our scores are going to be very good in those, and that the majority of our students are going to be meeting and exceeding state standard. At least of the ones who take the test. I think to compare kids who don't take a test when they get a 0 is a little bit silly. The second thing that I'm interested in doing, and I'm interested in this from now forward. I'm not interested in recreating it because it's, again, comparing like apples and oranges. But now that we have iReady and we have an assessment tool that allows us to track kids, I would love to start, and I know that you guys are doing this, but I would love to see it being reported on actually being able to demonstrate growth. And for the same group of kids, I think looking at first graders and looking at fourth graders, they've had very different experiences. The fourth graders started their schooling online, our first grader, and with a different curriculum. Our first graders started, in person and with the newer curriculum that all our students are receiving now. So that's comparing actual apples to apples. And I want to make sure that our students, and then, it can be pulled out for our students on IEPs, our students on 504s, our ELLs, our highly capable students, and then looking at growth and making sure that we are meeting the goals. And the goals, as I understand it, are a 1 year or more of growth for all students who are at or exceeding grade level, and a year, or it might even be 2 years for those who are below grade level. And those are our overall goals. While we might hope for others, and we might want, frankly, the rich to get richer faster, meaning those who achieve higher. That isn't our role in the public schools, and that we need to make sure that our students are all being able to achieve at a minimum a year's growth and hopefully more. And I think that we have a really great way of being able to measure that now. So that's something that I'm interested in making sure that we are doing. I think it's getting really dangerous when we all take data points and then make it say what we want it to say, whether our district is succeeding or failing. And I think we need to be very clear on data and understanding exactly. I think we need to really take a second look at how much of this data we're releasing, not in terms of hiding it, but in terms of the misinformation and misrepresentation of pulling data out that isn't saying at all what people are trying to make it say. When you're looking at raw scores, you know, you have to actually be a statistician in order to make comparisons. And I just want to make sure that we're doing that accurately and appropriately.
Yeah, I see you, Dan. I just wanted to say thank you so much for the clarification, Weston, because I completely misunderstood this at the last meeting. And I also misunderstood it when I looked at the numbers again on my own. So I think it's I would maybe have not put like a line between the bars on that bar graph, because I see that as like a continuous thing where we're seeing change over time. So I think if it was just independent bars, it might have been a little clearer, but I think you have to maybe dumb it down a little bit for us and make like a big caption and tell us exactly what we're looking at, because we're looking often at a lot of like data when we're getting ready for a meeting. And I think, at least I will only speak for myself, but I completely misunderstood what those graphs were about. So I really appreciate the clarification. And I am interested in the things that Deborah just mentioned in terms of like, how are our kids learning, what is their actual growth, how we can measure that, year over year to make sure that they're on track. And I think that would be very helpful. Dan.
Yeah, I'm very interested in seeing growth data. It's the reason that for 3/4 plus of students that are meeting state standards, showing where they are with respect to state standards tells us nothing for the majority of our students. I don't see that as a good metric. And I find the comment of the comparison to the wealthy getting wealthier extraordinarily concerning. The entire purpose of a highly capable program is identifying students that demonstrate the highest capacity for accelerated learning. And to say that their acceleration should be stalled in order for other students to catch up is concerning.
Fred?
The piece I would add to the conversation in terms of, if I'm looking just broad educational experience or outcomes for our students, I think being able to see that our students are growing over time, while it may seem intuitive that yes, in kindergarten, then in first grade, they should be getting higher in second grade and so on. That's not always the case in all systems. And I do want to just illustrate that, in general, whether or not you're identified for highly capable services or not, you're making progress, or by and large, students are making progress, I think is a really positive thing for our system. I also think that we have a much better metric than we ever have before to be able to look at the student level. And, while we could never in a board meeting go to that level, I do with our principals, and our principals are with the teachers in their schools, and the teachers are with their colleagues, getting all the way down to that student level. And I think that is reflected in the school improvement plans, which have shifted from, yes, we want all students to grow a year, but how are we going to measure that? We now have a really great tool. And, it's fascinating and exciting to me when those fall benchmarks come out, the winter benchmarks come out, and the teachers are clamoring for that data. What's happening here? And no one's harder on themselves than the teachers themselves when they see a student who didn't grow as much as they were hoping. And then they're putting in new interventions. So I don't want to lose sight from an educational perspective, because we're looking at big numbers, of some of the positives, irrespective of what label you have as a student.
So I don't really know where this leaves us in terms of when is a good time for us to hear answers to some of the questions that Deborah's asking. And I'd love to hear from Jody and from Christina, who I see both have their hands up, to hear if that's their interest or if there are other questions that they have. So let me recognize Jody first, and then Christina, and then Fred, if you want to talk to us about when would be good to kind of get more information.
Sure.
Yeah. Just when we're clarifying what those charts, those two charts meant, because that was also new information for me that we weren't tracking the growth. So the two sets of charts, one is the one that's like all students is all students plus including the high caps.
That's
And the
correct.
other one is just the high cap.
Correct.
Okay, so there's no like data of like non-high cap students versus.
That is fine. Correct.
Right. Okay.
But
I think, I mean, just for like the people in us who have never passed a statistics class, Weston, it would be super useful to have some really clear labeling, because as Maggie Tai said, we do get a lot of information, and it's a little hard to parse out sometimes.
And remember that we're all old and like can't see tiny print very well on our screens,
Not Christina.
except for Christina, who is eternally youthful. Christina?
I am, and I think that I mentioned it the last time, besides what Deborah mentioned about the growth that I would love to see, in the demographics, looking at by gender, and this is my hypothesis. I know that girls do not tend to go to math careers or tech careers as much as boys, and it will be very interesting when they're tested in first grade, fifth grade, if there's a difference in gender or when does it happen, so we can do an intervention beforehand and let them know to every single kid that they're totally capable in overachieving in math. So this is just a hypothesis to see that with the data that we have, we can actually see when that happens.
Fred, what is your thought, or Weston, about like what information could be presented to us and what a good time for that would be?
Can I start by summarizing what I heard today as requests to make sure I have them all? And I think, first of all, I thank you for the opportunity to clean this up for you and to just better provide you with information that you need as a board. So what I captured is a question about demonstrating growth within cohorts rather than a year-over-year comparison, clear labeling and clear understanding of who is in that group, also separating students who are receiving services and identifying students who are not receiving services in that data as well. And then I heard a request for demographics by gender, including longitudinal data about gender in the program for students receiving services and not. Does that accurately capture everybody's request there?
Yes, I think that's pretty accurate. I also support Christina's suggestion of capturing it by gender. I think that would be really interesting to see, like just because of the push to get more girls and young women into STEM careers and STEM areas of study. I think it would be really interesting to see. I know that for my own part, I loved math until I got to third grade and had a really awful fifth grade, had a math teacher who consistently said, boys are better at math, only boys should learn computers, etc. That pretty much turned me off of math for the rest of my school career, So I think, unfortunately, hopefully that doesn't happen in our district, but there is definitely like a point at which girls can be socialized kind of out of their interest in math and science. Deborah.
I just wanted to say, like, these are the things between now and the end of the school year, I think our schedule's pretty tight. When I present the things that would be helpful to me as a board director, in terms of monitoring, for me, it's much more in the future. also with the fact that the iReady, is newer. So, in the fall, when we've done the first, testing for iReady at the beginning of the school year to see where the students are at, to be able to track those cohort from this year to this year to next year. I'm speaking in the future. So in September, it'll track the same group of kids from the previous September. And I'm not sure exactly. I don't know that we have a ton of it going back farther than that. That's what I'm interested in seeing. Now that we have this great data, let's start using it in the way and make sure, obviously we're not going to make any changes immediately because it's new. But let's just make sure we're on the right path and that we're not, 5-6 years down the road and realize we're in a curriculum that isn't meeting the needs of our kids. So I'm not looking for any update now. I think there was a severe misunderstanding of what our monitoring report was at the last board meeting. It was really whether or not the district is in compliance with the state's requirements for highly capable screening and services, not in what particular program are we going to and services are we going to be providing our kids. And so, we've talked about doing a deep dive in the high cap curriculum and programming and services, but this wasn't it. And so I just want to make sure it's clear what the monitoring that we did was and that we actually voted on. And then perhaps we can calendar when we're going to do that deeper dive on the highly capable. I'm talking about data and monitoring and emphasizing that in the future, the things that would be helpful for me is I think it's extraordinarily important, even if 97% of our kids are at or exceeding standards, we need to know that, right? I mean, that's our job. And then we also want to know growth because our kids are, frankly, even if they weren't doing so well, we'd want to make sure that they were growing at the rate that we want them to grow. And if not, what other tools and services can we put into place? So those are the things that are meaningful to me. But that's moving forward. That's not going back. I want to make sure that our educators are spending time working with our current students than diving into data to find things to show us what has happened in the past. That's my personal view.
I see a hand by Dan and Jody.
Yeah, there was, to clarify, there was no misunderstanding on my part of what the meeting last week was about. It was about whether the board independently approved the highly capable plan, because whether we were individually satisfied that it meets the requirements under state law. And as you know, my view is that it doesn't, because we don't have evidence that it facilitates accelerated instruction and enhanced learning.
So the vote was actually literally on whether or not we approved of the district's submission to the state. So that is what the vote was on.
It's whether we approve the highly capable plan. That is what is required under WAC when you're submitting the submission to the state.
Sorry, let me just jump to Jody really quick, and then Fred, if you want to address that. Jody?
Yeah, I just wanted to going back to what Weston had when he was summarizing his capturing us, and we do want to see the growth of the the same cohort year to year, but we also do like to see that year by year class info that you presented this year, just clarified maybe that that's what we're seeing, but that was also very useful, and I understand that that's the information that that the program holistically looks at, to see like, oh yeah, it's, students are growing over time too, or by grade as well. So I just want to make sure that we're not precluding that information staying in when we add the new tracking by year. And I also want to align myself with Deborah's comments about not needing to be briefed, particularly again on it as of now, but more interested in this information going forward, that it's a very interesting information to capture. But I don't really see a need to sort of, I don't see actually how we could, but like to retcon, like that information going back unless easily, or just to be aware of like sort of like what would be good information to have going forth. If I've accurately captured what you were saying, Deborah. Yeah.
Fred, did you want to address Dan's comment and Deborah's regarding like what the plan, it's like the program itself versus the plan submitted to the state?
So we have to each year apply for the allocation of funds from OSPI for the highly capable program. And so that is one of our I grants, they call them. It's similar to TBIP, the Transitional Bilingual Instructional Program, as well as other title funding. This particular one, the program is reviewed annually by the state for compliance. So we have to send in documents every year that outlines our particular plan and our program of what we provide. We attach the plan for the board to review for formal approval pursuant to the WAC, and I believe that's the one Director Glowitz is responding to or calling our attention to. And then we've outlined that as instructed by OSPI, the plan is in 4 parts and comes together to create a full plan. And we submit them as a technical step necessary to receive the state funds. And that you are approving, the board, is approving the plan in our program. And so, the program is outlined in those 4 parts. And I think Director Glowitz over time has not seen that our plan is compliant with the state. The state has, when they don't see something that is in compliance, they send it back for review. I don't know, did you have any, you'll submit it now.
It has already been submitted to the state, and then you notify the state at the time it has been approved by the board, but there's a deadline.
And they have not sent back any corrections for you as of yet.
That's correct.
When I used to do this grant, they send it, as with any grant, if they find things that are not in compliant with what they believe to be the state laws, then they kick it back to us and we make changes. That's the same for Title I, Title II, Title III, any of the federal and state grants. So I think there might be ongoing disagreement about whether or not the program or our plan meets the state law. OSPI, historically, at least since I was doing the grant, and then directors, I guess Williams, then Director Prescott, and now you, Coordinator Weston. So that's what I would say on that. With respect to timing of when we might review the data again, we do have an opportunity in June at a study session. We have an opportunity next fall when we come back and we do Fundamental 2, which outlines a lot of other data elements. It could be part of that review. If you wait until then, you'll get a full year worth of data, which would be fall, winter, and spring, versus right now, you're only looking at fall to winter data. And so you would see you'll also see a report coming back in the school improvement plans that have identified a year's worth of growth. And that would be then next fall as well. So you have a couple of different options as a board.
Thanks. Dan, I see your hands up.
Yeah, I would just make the statement that, my position is that the board's assessment is independent of OSPI. As far as I'm aware, OSPI has never found, for instance, that the Seattle Public Schools has a deficient, highly capable program. I know many in the community feel that it does. So it's an independent determination made by school board members that is independent of, a removed state bureaucracy that I think generally finds uniform compliance.
I don't think anybody's gonna change anybody's mind here as far as like whether, a person can choose to take this as a sort of symbolic representation of the HiCap program as a whole. I personally am very interested in doing kind of the deep dive into the HiCap program, but I wouldn't necessarily prioritize it ahead of other things that we've talked about, like the, college and post high school readiness, preparation, some other topics that we've, discussed. I would love to, the next time we have a like a board study session to kind of bring up the list of items that we've talked about in the past and really prioritize them together as a group and say, like, you know, given that this is a very busy spring, you know, if we want to start planning now for, you know, a deep dive of something in September, what is that something going to be? So that's my suggestion. As far as I think it would be more useful to see more data rather than less data, but Jody and then Fred.
I was just saying, I think that it would be useful to, whenever we have this deep, if we're going to look at the high cap program again, or look at the data again, I would like to have the year's worth of data rather than incomplete data.
Yeah.
That would be more useful for me personally.
Fred?
So a couple thoughts. In May, when we come for the OE10 report, the two areas that we will provide you with a deeper dive into, well, actually there's three. One is an annual, and that is our college and career readiness, or our CTE, that we do as part of that grant. The other two, though, that you're going to see, one is on AI. That's been a request from the board that you had made as a group. And the other one is on the college and career postgraduate options and how do we help students to get there. So that'll be part of OE10 in September. I agree then we would want a calendar out when you would want to see more updates with respect to another program. If it can be outside of the OE10 sequence, we can definitely add that in, but we can do that. We'll be providing you with some data at the end of the school year, or likely in August, which will be kind of some of that catch-up data, since we're not doing the reports on the fundamentals and the way that we've done them. Our plan is over the summer is we will come to you in your August, either your first August meeting or your second meeting. So it's before your school year or your kind of calendar year closes out. And we'll be providing you with a lot of updates. I think to your point, Director Martinez, we already provide some data to you around gender and race and ethnicity with respect to highly capable. I think you've asked for some additional nuances, which we'll add to that report. So we have no problem getting you some of that. So you're going to get some of this data naturally. For a deeper dive, happy to schedule that with the president and vice president, calendar that out for the fall. I'd certainly want to involve staff in that. And so, you know, we either start working on it at the tail end of this year or in earnest once the school year were to start. So we'd be ready for a report in the fall.
That sounds reasonable. Sounds good. Can I get thumbs up for that general concept? Okay, thank you. I can at least eyeball 4 thumbs ups. Eddie, if like, as far as I'm concerned, like, I'm good with the clarifications and the kind of overall plan. If nobody else has additional questions or comments, we could be done.
Director Tucker, did you want to talk at all around preparing for public comment at the next board meeting?
Yeah, I mean, it's not, it's when we talked about that earlier, I was thinking that there was going to be like a kind of board reports section to this meeting, but just if, like, I would love to talk again in future, like have the board have a full discussion of the plan for public comments when public comments are extensive, because it's certainly not the last time that that's going to happen. But we can't afford to have 2 hours of public comment and not get our agenda items done, and then have to have like a whole nother meeting to make up the time, you know? So my suggestion would be that we notice that we inform people ahead of time, that we put on the sign up thing, that people can have, like, if there are more than, say, 20 commenters, that people will have 1 minute of comment time on that evening, and additional comments can be made in writing, something like that. Yeah, Deborah. And then Jody.
I was just saying you're calling on me before Jody, but I would prefer, rather than limiting people to a minute, I would prefer that we set a limit, like say the first 20 people to sign up, and that would limit it to an hour. And I think that would just make people, I think we've been very lax about, people showing up and talking. I think it's going to be rare that happens. We happen to have, anytime there's rifts or contract issues, I think it's our duty to listen. And I know you're not saying that it's not, but a minute is very brief, and maybe we go to 2. I mean, maybe that would be a good compromise. But I would rather it be, then people need to actually sign up ahead of time, plan ahead if it's that important, and not just come and talk to us off the top of their head. I don't know. I mean, some sort of compromise, because I agree with you that 2 hours is too much during a business meeting.
Yeah. If we're going to say, the first 20 speakers can speak verbally and everyone else has to submit their comments in writing, which is fine and legal, then we should really have like a time that we open for registration for comments, because otherwise it's not fair, because people could email right now and be like, I want to speak at the meeting in May. So we should say like sign up starting at noon the day before, something like that. And it's not on Michelle to like do anything different in terms of gatekeeping. It's just like anything that comes in before that time, I guess you'd have to have like an auto reply. Like if it comes in before that time, say, sign up for comments will begin at noon the day before the meeting, something like that. Jody, yeah. Maybe Jody has all the answers.
I have all the answers. I think that, the 1 minute, first off, I think 20 is still a lot of public comment, because that would still be an hour. And that is a lot in a 3-hour work meeting. It's to devote 1/3 of it to public comment. And as we did in this last meeting, have to either truncate or move our agenda items to elsewhere is not, I think, what the meeting is for. And Deborah, I think the 1 minute number was basically modeled off of the legislators, because that's what you get for a public testimony in Olympia, to just be like, keep yourself succinct. My only concern with like first come, first serve is if we can figure out a way to sort of like, not have people ticket master the situation where they're really just kind of sliding in and blocking other people out, because you want to make sure that the entire public can be served. But God forbid there would be 50 public commenters and that would still be an hour, but at a minute each. But I don't know. It just was a little untenable to have 2 hours of public comment like we did last meeting. And we need to figure out another way maybe that we could handle it.
Fred.
I think as we saw in the review, and we will do the full review in May for the policy, which has not been updated in quite some time, and that will come up in May. We obviously updated the script, but I think what I noticed, and you might have as well, is just the wide spectrum of ways that both cities as well as school districts have tried to tackle this. I think that there's a delicate balance between getting the public input and wanting the public's input, which is a really big part of governance, but also being able to get through your agenda items. We had to table a couple or provide them to you in a different way. And so, as you've seen, there's everything from that 1 minute piece to only 20 people. And then after that, and then there's attempts that people have made around if there's multiple people wanting to speak on a topic, that they elect one person. I think the hard part on that one is that some of the people don't know each other. And so they may be there speaking about the same topic, but they don't even know to get together. So I think what you're confronting and what I would want the public to know is that I don't hear that there's an interest around not wanting the public to be able to talk to you and provide you with information. It's just how do you do that in a way that can either be through written comments, which are provided to you, which I know you all read, versus actually providing them in your meeting. So I appreciate the board having this conversation, and I think it illustrates what others are struggling with as well.
Just before I recognize you, Deborah, I wanted to say that Fred makes a good point that there were several things that had to be presented to us in a different format. So for example, we got the finance update in the form of a video, the week after the meeting, which means that the public is actually seeing less of the information than they would have otherwise, so the public is actually like in some ways losing we're not, I mean, in theory, they have access to it. It's still a public record, blah, blah, blah. Like we're having this secondary meeting now, but like, it's not optimal for the board's operation, but it's also not optimal for from the point of view of the public getting to see everything that has been, noticed is going to be discussed. Deborah?
I totally agree. I think we should set a time to, unless this is it, to really brainstorm the best ways. I know a couple years ago we had talked, or at least I suggested, I can't remember if we actually talked about it, creating more linkage sessions. I mean, we could do public linkage sessions, 2, 3, 4, like once a quarter or once a trimester, not during the summer, but once a trimester, and invite people to come, and we can have, an hour or 2 hours set aside where we're not doing other business, where people can engage in conversation. Public input is not, I mean, I appreciate what Fred said in terms of, we're all very interested in wanting to hear and get feedback and hear people's thoughts. And, and yet we, people kind of game the system in different ways. Well, I'm going to give this person my time. Well, you can't do that. And, and then if you let one person do it, then everyone else is going to want to do it. And then the sharing time, and yet, or one person speak on behalf of everybody. I want to hear the impact on people. So I want to hear individual stories, whether that's in person. It's just as meaningful to me in writing. So I don't want to get form emails from groups of people saying exactly the same thing. That's meaningless to me. It's not meaningless, but it's a very little meaning. But what's very impactful to me is hearing people's stories of how the decisions have impacted them and their children, or, vice versa, whatever. That's really meaningful. And I think that we learn a lot from that. So, I would propose, it's also really the way that we do public input. What's frustrating to me is that people come, say their piece before we've even had a discussion on the board oftentimes, and then they leave and don't even necessarily listen to the discussion. So why are we sitting there during our business meeting listening? I mean, it just doesn't make sense. Like it doesn't mean that we're not listening and hearing just because it doesn't happen in that same moment, because it's not happening in the same moment anyways. I would love to see, so I guess I would really suggest that we do like 3 linkage sessions a year, each, at the end of each trimester, school trimester, so November, March, and June, and we can hear from people. And then if they've got things to say, otherwise, we're always available, one-on-one, 2-on-1, email, phone calls, which we are anyways. I don't want to stifle it. I want to, public input's always been weird to me, that people come and talk at us. I think they would much prefer to have a conversation, or they're looking more for a conversation.
Go ahead, Jody.
Just to clarify, Deborah, would these linkage sessions be in lieu of public comment at the meetings, or in addition to?
In lieu of.
Yeah.
Oh, well, by law, we have to allow written public comment. We don't have to allow spoken public comment.
And I'm not suggesting we stifle anything in writing. I'm saying in terms of presenting for 3 minutes at public input, that we stop doing it at every meeting, or we could go down to one meeting a month. Like, we don't have to be providing public input for 3 minutes at every single regular board meeting.
Yeah. So I think we're going to be discussing this policy. I see you, Christina. We're going to be discussing this policy in May. So I think anything formal, but it's good to just kind of get a few ideas going about it. Christina?
And we can discuss it in May. Just wanted to mention that the linkage, if it's a conversation, it changes a little bit the dynamic, because we speak with one voice. So it totally changes a little bit some of the rules of the game. I like both. So we can figure out a way in May.
Another idea that I've seen or heard is to prioritize people who commit to speaking about an item that's on the agenda for a discussion and vote that meeting. And then if there's extra time, people can speak about their computer science project or whatever. So that's another idea. But anyway, I think we're not really coming to any conclusions about how to handle the next meeting, so we will just figure something out, hopefully on the fly for that one. But then we're going to have like we'll have a formal discussion of this in May, and hopefully update our policy in a way that is helpful. Yes, Christina.
Sorry, and I agree. I think that the priority is to finish the agenda. Next meeting is going to be a long one and a tough one. So I think that maybe the president or vice president can figure out a system that is fair, but at the same time, let us move together through that meeting.
Yeah, we'll figure something out for next
Yes.
time. Deborah and then Jody.
I was just going to propose, I don't see next time being as long, but I still think there's going to be issues. There's important things that we're addressing, but to say and announce it ahead of time. So it's not, but limit it. If there's more than 10 people signed up, that it's going to be limited to, or that we just limit it to 2 minutes, recognizing that there's going to be a lot of people. But I think the important thing is letting people know ahead of time. Doing it right then and there, like, oh, all of a sudden you planned out what you were going to say and now you're cut to a minute. Like, that's just not, that just doesn't feel fair to me. But as long as we publicize it ahead of time, I mean, I think you're right in terms of what the state legislature does, and 3 minutes, when you're planning it, that is a long time. Like And Christina, I love hearing from people too. It shouldn't come in the way of the business we need to.
Yeah. Jody?
I mean, I would suggest that maybe we just, for this next meeting, we try limiting the time to a shorter time period. Maybe, and then this will be one of the, I mean, the vast majority of our meetings, we've had like 0 to 3 or 4 people public commenting. So maybe last time was an aberration and sort of a confluence of events, but I think that maybe we can experiment a little bit, noting it ahead of time, like on the agenda or when it's posted on board docs or whatever, that just say, like for this next public meeting, we will be limiting comment to 1 minute, 90 seconds, 2 minutes, whatever. And then see how it goes. Because I mean, if you are preparing ahead of time, then that, 1 minute is, I mean, we haven't all, but like when you testify at Olympia, then, you can figure it out, how long a minute is and say it, or 2 minutes. But I think we're getting a fair number of people who are just sort of freewheeling it.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. And then we'll have more information going into our discussion in May. We'll have to do something different. Okay, that sounds good. Thanks, everyone. I believe that's it.
That's it for your agenda.
Yes. So do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor of adjourning this meeting, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, say nay. That passes by a vote of 5-0. Thank you very much, everyone. I would love to say this is a new record in terms of the quickness of meeting, but it's not a real meeting, so it doesn't count. But even for a special meeting, 53 minutes is still pretty good.
Were you going to entertain us with an interpretive dance or something, Maggie Ty, for 7 minutes?
For the next 7 minutes, yes. Thanks, everyone.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Fred, for letting me in.
Yeah.